Here we are, day 3. This is getting fun. Oh, just fun for me because it's keeping me on track. And it's good. Yesterday we ended on verse 22, which was a long one. So we're on 23. Miracles make time and tide wait for all men. They can heal the sick and raise the dead. Because you yourself made death and taxes and can abolish both. Here the word taxes is referring to tax in the sense of stress. Like, oh, that was very taxing to do this or that. It was stressful. So it's referring to it that way. Although humans did make taxes in the other sense of the word, and we can also abolish. Okay, I'm just here to read. Oh, sorry. Miracles make time and tide wait for all men. They can heal the sick and raise the dead, because you yourself made death and taxes and can abolish both. Note that tax also means strain. You are a miracle. God creates only that which or one who is of surpassing excellence or merit. A dictionary definition of miracles. You are capable of this kind of creation too, being in the image and likeness of your own creator. And that's a reference to Genesis 1 verse 26. God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness." The logic in the above reference is that if you were created in the likeness of your creator, then you can create like he did. Anything else is only your nightmare and does not exist. Only the creations of light are real. You who are wholly lovely, a perfect shaft of pure light, before your loveliness the stars stand transfixed and bow to the power of your will. What do children know of their creation except what their creator tells them? You were created above the angels because your role involves creation as well as protection. You who are in the image of the Father need bow only to him before whom I kneel with you. Verse 24. Miracles are a part of an interlocking chain of forgiveness, which, when completed, is the atonement. I'll read that again since I botched it. Miracles are a part of the interlocking chain of forgiveness, which, when completed, is the atonement. Forgiveness is the atonement. This process works all the time and in all dimensions of time. There's a note. Okay. It's just for referencing some backstory on the authors. I'm going to read that one more time because I really, really like that. The more I read it, the more it opens up in my understanding. Miracles are part of an interlocking chain of forgiveness, which, when completed, is the atonement. I almost want to cry. This process works all the time and in all the dimensions of time. I am in charge of the process of atonement, which I undertook to begin. My atonement was for the canceling out of all sins which you could not otherwise correct. In the Course, the atonement as an event refers to the resurrection, not the crucifixion. That is what the biblical statement underneath are the everlasting arms means. Deuteronomy 33:27. The eternal God is thy refuge, and underneath are the everlasting arms. According to the above passage, in the process of correcting our errors, we are supported by God. Our efforts need not be sufficient, because he, by way of atonement, will make up for whatever we cannot accomplish on our own. That's beautiful. Okay. So that is what the biblical statement underneath are the everlasting arms means. However, it is clear that when you cannot atone by miracles, both giver and receiver are atoning. It is better to atone this way because of the mutual benefits involved. Inasmuch as you do unto the least of these, my brethren, really ends with, you do it unto yourself and me. The reason why you come before me is because I do not need miracles for my own atonement, but I stand at the end in case you fail temporarily. This is the Spirit of Christ, the Christ consciousness, who is authoring the Course in Miracles. Just to clarify, when it says I, and I am doing this and that, that's the I. The word sin should really be absence of love. Sin is a man-made word with threat connotations he made up himself. Ooh, that's a good way to put it. No real threat is involved anywhere, just because nature abhors a vacuum, which is true enough. It does not follow that a vacuum is filled with hellfire. There's a note here. The saying nature abhors a vacuum is usually attributed to Aristotle. In this case, the vacuum is an absence of love, and obviously a vacuum of love should be filled not with hellfire, but with love. Nothing is gained by frightening yourself. It is very destructive. Miracles need freedom from fear. The note says, miracles here refers to doing miracles. The concept of miracles as an internal healing has not been mentioned yet. In other words, to give miracles, you need to be free of fear. Hallelujah. That freedom from fear is part of how miracles atone, how they undo old mental patterns in the receiver. Part of their atonement value involves that very freedom. The word atone really means undo. If you will look up atonement, you will find that an obsolete meaning is to set at one or reconcile, to agree. Obviously, before reconciliation or agreement is possible, what is out of accord must be undone. It may seem as if darkness must be dispelled before light can come in, but the truth is that darkness is dispelled by light. The next part of the course will place increasing emphasis on atonement, since changing learning patterns requires undoing old ones. The real meaning of retroactive inhibition is simply that when two kinds of learning coexist, they interfere with each other. Therefore, when you say, if you want me to, I will, please add, and if you don't want me to, I won't. This is the right use of inhibition. There has to be some control over learning for channelizing purposes. Sometimes the new learning is the more important and has to inhibit the old. It's a form of correction. This seemed for me to be completely just words that didn't make sense. There's a couple notes, so I'm going to go back and read some of this, and this will be our last verse for the day. So I'm going to start at the beginning of this, and I'm going to read the notes as they're placed in this passage. The next part of the course will place increasing emphasis on atonement, since changing learning patterns requires undoing old ones. The real meaning of retroactive inhibition is simply that when two kinds of learning coexist, they interfere with each other. The note says retroactive inhibition is where new learning interferes with the recall of previous learning. This tends to be viewed as a negative, but Jesus is framing it as a positive. Sometimes the new learning is more important and has to inhibit the old. Therefore, when you say, if you want me to, I will, please add, and if you don't want me to, I won't. This is the right use of inhibition. There has to be some control over learning for the channelizing purposes. And the note here says, for channelizing purposes means for purposes of channeling miracles when and where you're asked to by Jesus. Okay, so they're clarifying that word, channelizing purposes. And the last line is sometimes the new learning is more important and has to inhibit the old as a form of correction. Seems like this is talking about patterns of thinking, belief systems, and changing and correcting and learning. And if you've gone through periods of time where you are breaking old patterns, it's going to make a lot more sense than if you just haven't stepped into any of that yet. So the last one in this passage is line 6. Everything that results in lack of love, which you used to call sin, is the result of inferior learning, which, if overlearned, becomes very stable. Miracles are a way of undoing overlearned patterns of love lack. They bring light into darkness. That is where their atonement value lies. I really loved that last line, so I'm going to read it again. Everything that results in lack of love, which you used to call sin, is the result of inferior learning. If overlearned, becomes very stable. Oh. Okay, let me try again. Everything that results in lack of love, which you used to call sin, is the result of inferior learning, which, if overlearned, becomes very stable. Very stable. So what we call sin, lack of love, becomes stable. We don't want our lack of love to become what's stable. Miracles are a way of undoing overlearned patterns of lack of love. They bring light into darkness. That is where their atonement value lies. That's a good way to end. Thank you for being here with me, if you made it. And, I just pray that our hearts would be opened together. It's so cold. I'll see you guys next time. I love you.